Hi there. Today we are going to be looking at a Schoology course for on-demand hours. The course is where the CAP meets the AMP. Our CAP process that we work through our PLCs through that one-stop shop is a process for us to be systematic and go through an assessment to measure where we're at, design and instruct, and then do some final assessment to see how we did. Did we do something that caused our students to improve? And the AMP assessments are the assessments that at the beginning of each fall are pushed out from the district office through Schoology into your math courses, and then throughout the year at designated intervals and times, trimester 1, 2, and 3, different assessments are given. These have been intended to be summative in nature. They've been intended to support you as you're filling out report cards, but I'm hoping that this opportunity that we'll have together here will show some of the things that we can do to make this process more meaningful and leverage better results. So for this course, like I said, we're going to be showing the common threads and how they work together for the AMP and the CAP. We're going to actually break down the steps to the CAP process and show how we can insert AMP in it to be more meaningful. And this will cause the CAP then to be more effective. I also want you to know, as we're going through this process, if you're going through this course, whether you're going through this individually and it's helping you to be a leader on your PLC team, or perhaps your whole PLC has chosen to look at this, I am here to support this process. Please invite me to your PLCs and I can support you as we are looking for the best results for students through our CAP process. All right, so just an overview of the CAP process. As time has passed, there have been tweaks and changes along the way, but the same root process remains. The most current is a 6-step process. Things are being condensed and refined to be as efficient as possible, yet still having teams have the ability to glean out the important things from them. Really, the important stuff that comes from this CAP process is the conversation and the collaboration of how we can improve our instructional practices to impact change. So like here we can see these are the 6 steps. We're going to be going through all 6 steps with a special focus on step 4. So the Schoology tests, like I said, are being pushed out at the beginning of the year. Here is probably an image that some of you might be familiar with, and you see those. And it'll tell you if it's a trimester 1, 2, or 3 expectation. Many of you have been part of ISD 728 for many years, but if you are fairly new, you might not know that these assessments have been designed by the teams at ISD 728 who teach that grade level. They've been kind of brought through a process of unpacking the standards. What does it mean? How important is each standard? What does it look like through multiple choice assessment? While we realize that not everything is assessed well in multiple choice, we do know that there are some testing advantages to AMP. Some things take on a little bit of a different feel than multiple choice. So that's an advantage to this type of assessment through Schoology. Again, they're spaced out through the 3 trimesters. And there's really 2 purposes for these AMP assessments. One, we're hoping that the data that you receive through these will help to support any report card decisions that you make. By no means does a score on the AMP test indicate that you must give a certain score on the report card. That's one data piece, and we know as teachers that you have many data pieces that inform your decision. The second thing is we do look at it from a district level to see how we need to move best to support both teachers and students. We look at questions, perhaps there's how we're assessing it needs to be tweaked, or perhaps there seems to be a theme and we need to beef up some of the resources in that area. Just know that that district level data is used to be supportive. It's not punitive in nature. So here we get started with step number one. Step number one, you're going to need to have a pre-assessment. And what I suggest is go ahead and look at the AMP assessments that we have to give in math and decide which of those different assessments measures the most essential standards. When we look at the number of AMP assessments, different grades, grade 3, 4, and 5, they all have different numbers that they're having to do. But go through and see if some kind of bubble to the top. Look for endurance and leverage and necessity. These are kind of ways for us to know how important are each one. There are some that you just know a third grader has to be able to do this to be a successful fourth grader. And there's others that, well, they're very important. They're not just quite as important. Think about which ones would you intervene on? Which ones would you pull small groups from? Which are the ones that you're not going to let them keep going without having? The second thing you're going to do is once you have looked at those different assessments, identify which one you would like to bring through that CAP process. Once you've decided that one standard that is, in your opinion, one of the most important standards for your whole grade, for all your students, you are going to, as a PLC, create or design common formative assessments. Sometimes you'll hear them referred to as CFAs. This is just a pre-assessment. Typically, they're 4 to 5 questions, and they're written in the same fashion as the final summative assessment, which would be the AMP test if you choose to do it this way. Once you have decided what that essential piece is, what's super important, you've created that initial common formative assessment, then teachers are going to give the common formative assessment. That will bring you on to the second step. The second step is you're going to just be simply linking data into the form, into the CAP form. In years past, you've typed in data, but here you can simply insert screenshots, or you can insert a link to a spreadsheet, whatever works for you. The most important part is that you've taken this data and you've done the second thing on here, which is reflecting on the data. As a PLC team, what are the instructional strategies? The teacher moves is kind of what I call them. Compare and contrast. What's working for you? What's working for me? Just taking notice of those successes, having conversations of potential hurdles that you're feeling or seeing. Once you're done with the second step, you're going to move on to the third step. The third step is then to create that SMART goal. What do you want to see? What's the outcome that you're looking for? And remember to use a SMART goal that is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. You're going to move into the fourth step of the CAP process. And this is probably the part where you're going to spend the most time in this Schoology On Demand course digging in. At the elementary level, most likely when you're breaking down your categories, most likely you're going to break them down to an E, M, P, or D category. Remembering that qualifications for a D, a P, or an M, they might correlate to a number of the pre-assessment that you're giving, but also keep in consideration that is it independent and is it consistent? And that might help also with what you're going to do to support the students, because once you have got them into these groups, you're really going to be taking the time then and developing interventions that are appropriate for the students within that group. Once you have this, we have learning goals and scales, and as the years have come on, they have been beefed up with more and more resources, and learning goals and scales also have some scaffolding. Like if a student doesn't know how to do this, they first need to be able to do this. So part of this course is going to be really digging into the resources that are already out there, that have been designed by teachers in our district that teach the grade that they're doing it for. Once you have completed step 4 and you have kind of a plan of what you're going to do, you need to go ahead and teach. Use what you found in step 4 and do the teaching. Think about, how are you going to do it? Are we going to be pulling small groups? Are you going to be wanting to shift kids around? Can you shift kids around? How is the schedule going to accommodate that? Can you move teachers around? Is there something that you can do to leverage technology? This is a good time too to be thinking about, how are you daily going to be getting some quick feedback to help your next steps before giving that final summative AMP test. After you have completed the teaching process and you're feeling like it's time to go to that 5th step, you are going to be giving the AMP Schoology test. You're going to be giving this assessment as a summative assessment. This is again taken through Schoology on your math course. You're going to take the data that comes from that and you're really going to reflect on that data once again. Think about the instructional strategies that you have used to teach the skill. Compare and contrast the classroom data again. What were the teacher moves? Are there some that are effective? Are there some that weren't as effective? What kind of hurdles did you encounter? Here, the conversation is very, very important, much more so than anything else. Again, you have an opportunity to link in screenshots or links to data, hopefully making that process a little bit more streamlined for you. After you've done step 5, we're going to go into the final step. And the final step, and I'm going to change that to 6, the final step is to look back at that SMART goal and your summative data. And kind of evaluate, how did it go? Have some reflection time, interpret what you see. And then the final thought moving forward is, remember what makes assessments formative or summative is not the assessment itself, but it's what you do with the data. A summative assessment can turn into a formative assessment at any time. If the data says, well, no, we're not there yet, we need to keep on going, that assessment that you gave, intending for it to be summative, can go right into a formative assessment. You can do some reteach, you can pull some groups, and you can give another opportunity for students to show mastery, because we're living in the yet, and our goal is to identify what those most important things are and get every student there. Thank you for taking a little time Have a good rest of your day. And now dig into the next folder.